Sermon text once again, Hebrews chapter 5, the first 10 verses. For the sake of the camera, we'll read all 10 of them again. For every high priest chosen from among men is appointed to act on behalf of men in relation to God, to offer gifts and sacrifices for sins. He can deal gently with the ignorant and wayward, since he himself is beset with weakness. Because of this, he is obligated to offer sacrifice for his own sins, just as he does for those of the people. And no one takes this honor for himself, but only when called by God, just as Aaron was. So also Christ did not exalt himself to be made a high priest, but was appointed by him who said to him, "You are my son. Today I have begotten you." As he says also in another place, "You are a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek." In the days of his flesh, Jesus offered up prayers and supplications with loud cries and tears to him who was able to save him from death, and he was heard because of his reverence. Although he was a son, he learned obedience through what he suffered. And being made perfect, he became the source of eternal salvation to all who obey him, being designated by God as a priest after the order of Melchizedek. So far, God's word. Please be seated. Long ago, in many times and in many ways, God spoke to our forefathers through the prophets, but in these last days, he has spoken to us through his Son. My dear friends in Christ, what do you want to be when you grow up? I have 7 children. I've heard that question a lot, and I've heard a lot of different answers. One in particular kind of sticks out in my mind. Now, this is 20 years ago, so the details might be a little bit fuzzy, but our oldest boy was not quite yet old enough for kindergarten, so he went to Head Start, a pre-kindergarten thing, and at a meeting where we met all the other parents and other Head Start kids and so forth, they had one of those group activities where you try to get to know other people and so forth, and so they asked the kids, what do you want to be when you grow up? And of course we heard a ballerina and a princess, and we heard a police officer and a fireman and an astronaut and a president, but my boy, leave it to him, he said, and I quote, "a tax collector." And that's kind of the reaction the parents gave too. What? A tax collector? And they asked us, and my wife and I, no idea where that came from. The night before, our devotion had been on Zacchaeus, so perhaps he was remembering our family devotion, and I don't know if he thought about how Zacchaeus was rich, or how Zacchaeus got to climb a tree, or why, but he said he wanted to be a tax collector. Okay, leave it to a PK, right? Like I said, I've heard that question a lot, but I have never heard anybody say, I want to be like Jesus. Let me clarify. Half a dozen years ago, there was a popular song that said, I want to be like Jesus. But it's not quite the same thing. You see, there are a number of evangelical people out there who like to focus on Jesus as an example. Morality that we should follow, that whole, what would Jesus do type movement. Well, we should be like Jesus in morality. And I'm not going to argue with that. That's certainly an excellent standard to follow. However, we're Lutherans. And as Lutherans, we think that justification is more important than sanctification, because sanctification can't happen until we understand justification. Big terms, let me explain. Justification is, how do you know you're going to heaven? How can God find you acceptable? And we believe that forensically, legally, God says, declare you to be a saint. Because of what my Son has done, He has taken away your sins. He will give you perfection. You are legally declared to be a saint. Forensic justification. Once we know that, once we know how we are justified, that's when we start acting like the saints that we are declared to be. That's when we start sanctification in the process of living better lives. Now, a lot of times people put the cart before the horse. They all talk about living a better life, but you need to understand justification before you can talk about sanctification. And so Lutherans, especially during Lent, we focus on how Jesus had to take on Himself all the sins of all the world and died in order to expunge our sins. And He rose again, we celebrate on Easter, because God was happy with that sacrifice. That is the heart of Lutheranism. That is the heart of Lent. And in that context, I have never heard anybody say, I want to be like Jesus. Because as Lutherans, we understand, first of all, that's God blood. And we can't even come close to offering any kind of sacrifice like that. And even if we could, let's face it, hundreds of people have been crucified. Would we really want to? Would we really want to be like Jesus? To quote a 20-year-old movie, a red pill and a blue pill. If you want to stay happy in your own ignorance, take the blue pill, you'll go back to sleep and everything will be normal. We're about to take the red pill. We're going to see how far this rabbit hole goes. So if you want to take the blue pill, then if you're watching on video, hit stop, find another video to watch. If you're stuck here in church and you don't want to take this red pill, go see if you can find a snack in the kitchen. But before you do that, here's one thing I want you to consider. Maybe you've never said, I want to be like Jesus. But have you ever thought about the fact that maybe Jesus has said, I want to be like you? Why would Jesus want to be like us? I mean, He's God. He's got all power and all authority. He can do whatever He wants, whenever He wants, however He wants. Why would He want to be like us? Why would He knows our lives are miserable and screwed up. Everything is wrong. Nothing is right. He can have such a better life. Why would He want to be like us? Red pill. Hebrews chapter 5. For every high priest chosen from among men is appointed to act on behalf of men in relation to God, to offer gifts and sacrifices for sins. He can deal gently with the ignorant and wayward, since He Himself is beset with weakness. Because of this, He is obligated to offer sacrifice for His own sins, just as He does for those of the people. Why would Jesus want to be like us? Why indeed? Because He loves us. Because Jesus loves us so much, He wanted to be like us. In order to be a high priest that could intercede for us and take our case to God, in order to be our Savior, He had to become like us. Even though that means taking on weakness and misery, pain. But in our text, we are going to see that Jesus actually became more than us. We kind of hinted on it last Sunday in Bible class. In fact, I didn't know that this was going to be the text I was preaching on, but I made an allusion to it in the Bible class, that this gives us some insights that the gospel writers don't really tell us. During Lent, we like to refocus on the Passion history, and we remember that Jesus went to the Garden of Gethsemane, and 3 times he told his disciples, stay awake, watch and pray, the spirit is willing, flesh is weak. And he went off and prayed, Father, if it's possible, take this cup from me, but not as I will, but as you will. 3 times he came back, found his disciples sleeping. Not because they didn't care, but because they were concerned, they were worried. What that gospel accounts don't tell us is what Hebrews tells us here. Once again, verse 7. In the days of his flesh. Let's clarify. In Greek, there are 2 different words, sarx and soma. Sarx is commonly translated as flesh. Soma is translated as body. Jesus still has a human body. The human body of Jesus died, rose again on Easter, ascended into heaven. Jesus still has a human body. This is not talking about skin and bones. This is talking about his humiliation. Not his soma, but his flesh. And generally speaking, flesh can be that which is corrupted and is corruptible. Jesus never sinned, but his body sure acted like he did. That's this whole part of thing about Jesus wanted to be like us, and so he took on flesh. Even though he never sinned, his body sure acted like it did. He grew up, he grew pain, he grew dead. So his body, his flesh. So in the days of his flesh, Jesus offered up prayers and supplication with loud cries and tears. We don't see that per se in the Garden of Gethsemane, but it's hinted there. We are told that Jesus went a stone's throw away, and yet the disciples still heard what he was praying. He was praying loud enough for them to hear and understand. In fact, the way the author of the Hebrews describes it, these loud cries of strength were torn out of him. He was in such anguish. And even if we think, well, that's not a big deal, sweating drops of blood, meeting an angel, let's not forget that the reason he was so passionate about his passion was because he knew what the future held. He knew that crucifixion was only hours away. And there too, he would cry out in tears and blood. Jesus wanted to be like us, and that means taking on pain and suffering. And he took on more pain and more suffering than any of us. Why? Because he loves us. We can't understand that love of God, but we just believe it. Not only did Jesus suffer more than we did, but Jesus also suffered better than we do. Now, once again, we are told about how he was crying, how he was shouting, how he was begging God. One of the figures uses like an olive branch. It's, help, help, I need help. Jesus was really suffering both in the garden and on the cross, but through it all, he did not grumble, he did not complain, he did not say, why, oh God? Well, on the cross he said, why have you forsaken me? Through it all, Jesus said, not my will. Thy will be done. Not only did Jesus suffer more than we did, he suffered better than we did. And that was the only way to save us. You see, the essence of sin is disobedience, rebelling against God. And a lot of times I like to think of myself as a pretty good person. I'm trying to, stay away from sin. I'm pretty good. Yeah, until it comes time to obey. And not just any kind of obeying, but obeying when it says it's time to suffer. It's time to go where you don't want to go. It's time to do what you don't want to do. Then how good are you at obedience? If God says, okay, I want you to binge watch Gilligan's Island, have some popcorn and some bonbons. Oh yeah, I hate that show. That's not really torture. But what if God says, I want you to carry a cross? Are we quick to obey? Okay, God, thy will be done. No, I'm not. But that's why Jesus wanted to be like us. So that he could carry out that obedience perfectly. And not just an obedience of doing what you kind of want to do anyway, but because God says, okay, fine. But no, this is obedience of suffering and pain and death, what he did not want to do, but had to do for perfect obedience. He did it perfectly. He gives us credit for it. That's why the marvel of marvels, the author of Hebrews says, and being made perfect, understand what he means by that, completing the goal, once he finally understood, although he was a son doesn't have to follow the law, he's above the law, and yet Jesus had to put himself under the law and learn obedience through suffering. Once he completed that goal, once he fully became like us in suffering, he became the source of eternal salvation to all who obey him. Uh-oh. There we go again. To all who obey him. But aren't we just complaining that I can't obey? That when God tells me to go where the going is tough and to do things I don't want to do, I don't really want to do it and I don't really obey him? Here's where it's important that we understand the difference between law and gospel. The law, summarized in the Ten Commandments, summarized in one word, love. Love God perfectly, love your neighbor as yourself. The law demands, do this and you will live. Don't do this, you will die. The law is perfect, but we are not. We cannot keep the law. That's why we need a Savior. The gospel, on the other hand, is a completely different doctrine. The gospel is not about do this, don't do that, you will live. The gospel is about Jesus did this, Jesus didn't do that, Jesus gives you perfection. Believe that and you will live. And that's what the obedience is. Faith. 1 John tells us this is what God demands, that we believe him. Even this is not something we can do on our own. Even this is something that the Holy Spirit has to work in us. Faith to understand, faith to believe. Another way of translating that word faith is being persuaded. I can't persuade myself, but God can persuade me. And once I am persuaded, I say, wow, thank you, God. That is the obedience talked about in Hebrews chapter 5, verse 9. Those who have been persuaded, those who, amen God, find that Jesus is their source of eternal salvation. Because he suffered more than we suffered, and suffered better than as we suffered. So what do you want to be when you grow up? Do you want to be like Jesus? I still don't. I still don't want to take up my cross and follow him. But God knows that. And that's why God graciously leads us even through suffering. Because through that suffering, God leads us to rely on Him more and strengthen our faith. Through that suffering, we get to be like Jesus. And so we thank God, especially for the cross that He gave Christ, but also through the cross that He gives us. For in that cross, we get to be like Jesus. Amen. Now may the God of peace equip you with everything good that you may do His will. Created